Hello and welcome to Tabletop 24. I'm Alan.
I'm John.
I'm Brian.
And welcome to another episode of We'll Play Again, where we take a look at games we've recently got to the table with a view of how quickly we can get them back to the table. With ever-growing collections, time can be precious, so we answer the question of would we play again? Today we have Ra from 25th Century Games. This is the latest reprint of Ra, and it comes with some niceties. Now there is an additional deluxe version that has some other different bits, but we'll get to that later. In Ra, we are going to be competing kings over 3 epochs to have the most prosperous nation. On our turn, we can do one of 3 actions. The first action is to take a tile from the bag and place it in the auction row. Now, if that was the Ra tile gets discarded from the game, and we go into an auction. If there was already 10 tiles out on the auction track and the auction track was full, we don't have that option. A second option would be to invoke Ra, which would start an auction. The third option would be if we had a god tile, we could discard that god tile from our tableau in order to take any tile from the auction row. Quite useful if you find that one set that you're looking for or that extra tile that you need without having to go into an auction. That is only the first part of the turn. The second bit, obviously, is going to be where we go into auctions. Now, there are 3 different factors that will determine the rules of the auction. First one is if the auctions come off of a Ra tile, we would be able to all pass. If it was an invoke, I invoke Ra, and the auction track was full, we would all be able to pass. If we all passed, we would then discard all of the auction tiles in that row, because none of us actually want them or don't think them valuable enough. If I invoke Ra myself and the auction track isn't full, I must bid if nobody else has bid. Okay, so I might end up getting stuck with something. Now, how we bid is by choosing one of these sundial tiles in front of us. And we would say, if I invoke Ra, or whoever invokes Ra will be going last. So, for instance, John would potentially say
7.
I would bid 7. Brian would then go
9.
And I would go too rich for my blood. I pass. Brian would win that auction. He would then swap his 9 with the 1. The 1 will go on his board face down, and he will be able to use that in the next epoch. If the Ra tile was drawn, we would move this sundial boat or sunboat down until we get to the end of the track, which would cause the end of the epoch. Or alternatively, if all players have used their sundial tokens, we would then flip them back over, and the person with the highest number gets to go first. Okay. The tiles that you can potentially draw out will all have different types of scoring mechanisms. The monument tiles only score at the end of the game, and they'll go here. And they will score based on number of sets. So you can have a set up to 8, or number of identical tiles, and they will both score. So if I had 3 of these tiles, I would score 5 points for that, but I would also score it in the sets that I could potentially have. Obviously, Ra tiles will have gone back in the bag, which would have caused an auction. We can have Pharaoh tiles that would go down here. Now, every other tile that we collect will score at the end of each epoch, apart from these monuments. So Pharaoh tiles, at the end of each epoch, person with the most gains 5 points, least loses 2 points, and if you're equal, you gain 0. Then we have Nile tiles, which are these ones here. Nile tiles will score for you, but you need to have had a flood tile, which will be going over here. So you start off with 1 plus flood times Nile tiles. Okay, if you ain't got any flood, don't have any Nile tiles. Our flood tiles will score 1 point for each flood. Then we have our civilization tokens, which if you've got an equal number of them, you will be gaining points. But if you don't have a minimum of 3, you'll be losing 5 points. Gold, which is this one here, which will be worth 3 points for each one. And then we have our god tiles. So as we said before, we can spend these, but we could also keep these because they are worth 2. Now, any funds that I've gathered throughout the game are actually played face down, so you don't actually know where you stand. At the end of each epoch, all of these tiles on the right hand side will get discarded and returned back to the box. The ones on the left will remain for the next round or the next epoch, and so you are building those up over the 3. At the end of the game, the person with the most total number of sundials gains 5 points. The person with the least will lose 5 points, and everybody else will gain 0. Person with the most funds at the end of the point, or most points at the end of the third epoch, will win. One tile that we didn't cover was disaster. Sometimes you might have to take disaster. When you take disaster, if I have still had this flood tile, this particular disaster is a flood disaster, I would have to take that flood tile and remove it from the game. If I didn't have anything, I could just take it and not cause any problems. So you want to know when you're going to take them or when you're not going to take them, because they could cause you some problems as we go through. So that's just a bit of an overview for Ra.
So first up, the production of this. This version is the standard version. It's not the Pharaoh version with the gold coins or these being wooden chips. But even that said, the production on this is pretty special. The Ra token, that's just obscene. It doesn't need to be like that at all, really. And the sunboats, the wooden sundial tokens are lovely. The thick cardboard. Now, I actually spent a lot of time and super glued the edges of these so they don't chip, because everything, 180 tiles in a bag, being rummaged, pulling them out, putting them in a box, putting them back in, rummaging, they are going to get probably chipped pretty quickly. Yeah. So, yeah, a bit of super glue around the edges, plasticizes them, makes them a bit more solid. But, you can't fault the artwork by tool. You really can't. It's comes to the table, it's quite a spectacular presentation.
Yeah, it looks very, traditional, if you like. But let's say themes that you see in Egyptian artwork and those tombs, and it does have that look and feel and the flavour of the game. So you feel like you're immersed in that.
The iconography is really clear as well. You get a lot of games where there's a lot of iconography, but the scoring, everything there is laid out for you. So it's it's pretty clear what you're doing throughout the game.
So I mentioned at the beginning of the rules explanation that there is a deluxe version of this. Now, you wouldn't have thought that looking at this that we've got in front of us, but there is a deluxe version where these are wooden and these are metal.
Yeah.
So if you want to go that extra mile, you can do.
It was an extra 40 quid, and I probably do regret not spending that money. But then again, that said, there's nothing wrong with this version at all. So, swings and roundabouts. I've seen the gold coin, the gold chips and stuff, and it is. It's like, oh, look at that. Could have. But this is a lovely, well produced version of the game, and I'm not going to dissuade anybody from picking it up if they haven't already got a copy of it. Yeah. Get up and running. To play the game, I think the teach is quite simple and it's quite easy to grasp, and there's a lovely dynamic in that by the end of your epoch you don't necessarily know what you're going to have to go on next turn. So in that, it does pick up and play quite quickly, I think.
Yeah, there's a little element of I could bid, but say if that was a 3, then I know that I'm going to end up with 3 on my board the next round, and I don't necessarily want to have a low number. So there's a little bit of deciding, well, do I bid now or do I let somebody else take that, and then they'll put in a higher number than 3 and I'll get that next time round.
And there is even the option to bid for the tile, not for the sundial, not the tiles that you get.
Yeah.
So vice versa, if that was a 13 and all we had left were low numbers, actually, it's worthwhile just bidding for that rather than.
There's a lovely tension in the game of the auction, of forcing people to potentially bid more than they want.
Yeah, I found that it's worth having low numbers in the second phase of the game.
Yeah.
So that you've got big numbers in the last phase of the game. When they
almost, more useful. Almost. And there's a lovely bit of also poker face. When we were playing this, you look around and it was like, saying how much I actually want this and what I'm going to bid. So the push-pull, the tension in the game is great.
And sometimes having to use a 13 to get a 3-tile run because it's the 3 tiles you need, or to actually get the Pharaoh tiles so that you don't lose a point, or actually get a civilization tile so you don't lose a point. But it's quite important.
But, looking at everybody's, so I'm going to, bid a 7. I know Brian's got a 9, you've got an 8. So you're pushing... making people bid what they might not necessarily want, and it's how much that you value those tiles to bring them over to yourself.
Yeah.
And I think it benefits from knowing the player group you're playing with as well. It's like, are you likely to? Am I likely to go for it?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, one thing we didn't mention during the setup was that these tiles are obviously quite deliberate. There are a set number of the tiles, and each tile is unique in itself, or the sundial are unique. So each player board comes with and starts with a set number. So there is a little bit of asymmetry there, but obviously it's very well balanced in what numbers you're getting, because obviously you don't want any particularly to be overpowered, or you don't want one that's got more value than others.
And in a 3-player game, you don't play with all the numbers, so there are ones left out. So there are higher numbers and lower
I
numbers.
think it goes up to 16 total. So and also different player counts will play with different numbers as well.
Yeah,
Different number of tiles. So yeah, I think you've really got that push pull of it. Now there's a bit of luck of the draw with what you get out of the bag.
I mean, there's 180 tiles.
Yeah. So it's whether what comes out when you want it, how you want it, and if you can afford it.
And you can bet your bottom dollar when you don't want a raw tile comes out.
You mark him out more often than we auction done.
There is a high proportion of raw tiles in here that is on purpose. I believe it's deliberate to make it to keep the game going, because otherwise you're just going to be drawing and discarding. And
yeah, because there is an actual tactic in the game to just sit back, not bid.
Yeah, and then
just use your tiles to be most efficient.
Take a pick of what's left.
Yeah.
I mean, what I like is you can see what other players are building, so you know when something comes up on the board. Oh, they'll want that. Now, do I let them have it? Or do I take it off them?
Yeah, and that's it. The interaction, because it's not just a tableau where you're just sat face down looking at you. You are checking and you look at others going, and you're not having that.
Especially these cards where if you've got the same number as somebody else, then it doesn't do any good. You want to make sure that I'm going to get at least one more.
Yeah, having use of the god tiles is important. You cannot underestimate trading the 2 point for a god tile for what might be 5 points in a run of 8, or what might be a gain of 5 if you've got more pharaohs than anybody else. So it's kind of, and also knowing what the distribution of those tiles are, because yes, you're probably going to push to the end game before all tiles come out. But if you know that there are, I think there's something like 20 pharaoh tiles, if you know that you've seen 8 of them, there's 12 left. So you know roughly where the split needs to be for you to maintain first place on it. So there's a lot of deep strategy in what is quite a simple 3-choice game.
It point salad was a phrase that used that you can score a lot of things in different places. And over the 3 epochs, you do build up the left-hand side of your board to maximise your points going forward, and just discarding those ones.
I just find it horribly disheartening to that whole right-hand side of your board gets wiped each epoch. It's very thematic, but it's...
But, disasters as well. You can force people to bid and take disaster tiles, so they're wiping out their points as well. Yeah. And that's another lovely thing. It's
Yeah, and it's like the flood tokens. Now, there's not a vast number of them, but you need them to score your Niles. And if you don't get a flood...
the amount of times we were waiting for a flood token to come out, that's ridiculous.
But and it's the value on replacing them. It's one there, how much do I really need that card?
And the value of them changes each game.
Yeah, and again, knowing it's going to be gone next round.
Yeah, you're paying a premium for stuff in later games that you might need, especially if you're waiting for that one monument to come out that you need to complete that row. You can force somebody to overpay it, or you can just, I'm going to play the higher one than you now, and I'm going to have that. You're not having it. It's
and it is potentially that even in a 3-player game. So the tile that I want comes out on John's turn. It's still got to go past Brian's turn for me to get it.
Yeah,
and so there is that nice, and that's only in a 3-player game. Obviously, in a 5-player game, that's a lot longer, and a lot more can happen with the limited space on the auction track. We may get to a point where we have to do an auction and everybody goes, "Oh, I'll pass."
And it comes back to that poker face. You're sitting there going, "I really want that. I don't want to show how much I want it," but also not by overbidding, because I could pay a 10, but you could beat that and you could beat that. And it's just like, where do I pitch that bid to make sure it might go round, and you might not want it, and you might want to keep that high one for later on. There's that tension in the game is excellent, I think.
Yeah, and and having the hidden point value as well. It's a nice thing.
You can tell roughly how people are doing.
Yeah. But it's I think it's that whole sort of empire of, well, this is mine, and you don't necessarily know what's mine, and I want this and I don't want
Considerably richer than you.
it. Brilliant. With everything being said, then, John, would you play again?
I'll play it again soon. It's a classic, and it's a classic for a reason, because the elements of the gameplay, it feels honed to just the right amount of everything. 180 tiles, you can tell how much they've been play tested to death over the years to make sure that's the right amount. It's great. I'd love to see more classic games being given a makeover and brought out like this. I think there's a great market for it, because you're not going to get stuff that's out of print, or you're going to find it in a bring and buy sale or whatever. But the classic versions makeover, yeah, they've space on my shelf for more of those, I think.
I'll play again. I'd like to play a bit more. It plays really quickly. In fact, we were saying that what slowed the game down actually was passing the bag to each other.
Yeah.
You knew what you were doing, and it was just the wire track came to the end almost too soon.
It's you take it out and you just put the bag down, and you're looking at the tile thinking, and then you almost need to just be handing it on. It needs a lazy Susan to be going, so it goes around the table quicker.
But yeah, I'd try to play it again.
Yeah. And for me, it's we'll play again. I think, yeah, John says it hit the nail on the head. It is a classic. I think it does a lot for what's out there. The production level of it is amazing. The fact that you've got the two versions, if you really wanted to splash out and go for the extra one. I think, don't get me wrong, I think what's in those boxes is very much worth the money you would pay for them. Yeah. But I do think that both editions are probably on the more expensive side for what you actually get in the box for the shortness of the game.
Doesn't need a massive RAR.
No.
Does it need?
It's absolutely ridiculous. I think there's no need for anything.
As I said in the unboxing, you could do a lot of damage with that.
Yeah.
So thank you for watching this episode of We'll Play Again. If you haven't done so already, please check out other videos on the channel. Give us a like and a subscribe, and we will catch you next time. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.